In 1854, a Dartmoor walking guide from Chagford called James Perrott walked out onto the North Moor and left a bottle in the middle of nowhere. The idea was that you could trek out there, find the bottle and leave a stamped postcard addressed to yourself, which the next finder would then post back to you. This is typical of those Victorians who, suddenly finding themselves with a lot of time on their hands and the means to travel about, invented all sorts of daft sports and pastimes to keep themselves entertained. Over the next century, letterboxing evolved into a full-blown hobby, with many more of these letterboxes being hidden on the moor. Exciting stuff, a whole world of secret messages hidden under the granite boulders we wander past while out for a moorland walk. As a man renowned for his whimsy, who loves riddles, mysteries and puzzles, and for whom Dartmoor is a second home, it seems crazy that I hadn't got into this before. I dug out an old book of my grandparents by Anne Swincombe to find out a little more about how letterboxing had evolved since the Victorian era. Nowadays, there are thousands of these secret containers out there, and once you locate one and look inside, you'll find a notebook and a stamp so you can prove you found it. Once you have proof of 100 boxes, you can send off for a special 100 Club badge. Surely an ambition for a future episode. But for now, I just wanted to get started. Little did I know that I was going to be put through a whole range of challenges and was to experience one of the strangest things that has ever happened to me out on the moors. Welcome back to the Dartmoor podcast. I said the Dartmoor podcast. That's better. On a scorching August day, I headed up to the eastern fringe of the moor to look for my first letterboxes. I armed myself with a map, compass, ink pad, personalised stamp, and most importantly, the Spring 2022 catalogue of Dartmoor letterboxes. The book is updated twice yearly to account for any new boxes added and to remove any boxes which have vanished. You look up the mapped square you are visiting in the index to find the names of letterboxes hidden in that area, and then find the alphabetically listed details for each specific box. This usually includes a more accurate 6-figure grid reference and some landmarks that can be seen from the box with compass coordinates so you can triangulate its position. There may also be some other clues and riddles. I rather ambitiously listed the name of 8 or 9 boxes in the Bowerman's Nose area and naively set off ready to harvest those inky stamps of goodness. Here are some lessons I learnt really quickly. Firstly, it's difficult, really tricky. They seem to be very well hidden, and the compass bearings are hard to use to pinpoint the boxes, as they might include something like the rowan tree, when there are several rowans visible. Secondly, don't go letterboxing in the height of summer. The hard-to-find boxes are even harder to find when there is shoulder-high bracken everywhere. Also, you could end up disturbing breeding birds, which no one wants. Oh, and it's hot, and there are ticks. I'm definitely saving any push for my 100 Club badge until it gets a bit cooler. And thirdly, bring your own ink pad. Some boxes do include a pad for your stamp, but not all, and even if there is one, it might have dried up or got soggy. Anyway, without giving away any locations, I did find a couple and got the satisfaction of whacking my first stamps in my notebook. But there were many more I didn't find. Here's a time-lapse of me miserably failing to find any letterboxes. Eventually, I retreated to the shade of some rocks for a cup of tea to reflect on my progress. But even this relaxing break was cut short by an absolutely extraordinary quantity of ticks, no doubt due to the local sheep also taking advantage of the shady spots around the tor. My usual system for dealing with ticks is to wear these very pale, faded grey jeans so that I can see the little buggers crawling up, then flick them into oblivion. But these were so numerous and tiny that a few were getting past my defences. On my way back to the shady woods for a refreshing dip in the bovey, it occurred to me that one thing that would certainly assist in finding more boxes would be more pairs of eyes. Luckily, I knew just the people. My mates Dave and Tom are always up for a ramble on the moor, and Dave, in particular, is a keen geocacher. And I had just the mission to tempt them out. a pilgrimage to that first ever letterbox left by James Perrott in 1854, what is now known as the Cranmere Pool letterbox. One small snag though, I was going to have to leave my comfortable, sunny, friendly Hobbiton part of the moor and head up to Mordor. Still, at least the weather said it would be a nice day. Undeterred, we set off on the long walk towards our prize, and David even highlighted a number of geocaches we could find on the way. Geocaches are essentially a modern evolution of the letterbox, being a hidden cache that you can find with the help of GPS coordinates on your phone rather than a compass. And rather than just being on Dartmoor, geocaches have spread all over the world. And Dave's a bit of an expert.
So I'm now a proud geocacher of over 3,000 finds, I think. A lot of geocachers sometimes do it for the numbers, find as many geocaches as you can, and there are lots of different challenges associated with that, like find 100 in a day or try and find 500 in a month. So 3,000 over 8-year period, and I wish it was far, far more. I wish I could do it on a more regular basis, probably on a daily basis, going out driving around Dartmoor and finding all of these geocaches. That sounds like it would be an awesome thing to do.
With the extra eyes and Dave's expertise, we were finding geocaches left, right and centre, while all the time drawing closer to our main prize. With plenty of miles to walk over this imposing and impressive landscape, we had plenty of time to reflect on why people were drawn to these niche activities.
Somebody told me about this particular hobby. I went out with them around a creek in Plymouth on one night, and I just absolutely loved it. I love the idea of just finding these hidden paths, these hidden areas that nobody normally went to, or places which I wouldn't go to, because why would you go down a pathway or in a field if you had no other business of being there? So for me, it opened up a whole world on our doorstep, a hidden world outside, beside us, near us.
Our plan was to keep using the old military roads to get as close as possible to our destination, before heading off-road to follow the West Oakmont River, which would lead us to the boggy depression known as Cranmere Pool. The letterbox is actually on the OS maps, so I don't think I'm breaking any letterboxing code by revealing the location here. Eventually, we reached a small pond rather mysteriously named Ockerton Court, where the road ended. This area of Dartmoor was particularly featureless and bleak, and we were going to have to head off the trail.
For my favourite geocaches out on Dartmoor, there haven't been the ones that were like really sneaky hides or ones that had interesting containers. But for me, my most favourite caches to find out on Dartmoor would be those that were at the top of a tour, those that might have had more of a meaningful walk for me to get to, and particularly places which I've never been to before.
Well, we were certainly heading somewhere remote. The path got smaller and smaller and smaller until there was no path at all. The combination of damp, tall grass, an uneven surface, and no way of seeing over the next ridge made this deeply, deeply unpleasant. I had assumed that although Cranmere Pool was a remote and secret location, there would be a little path or desire line, if you will, leading to the letterbox. If it was there, we didn't find it. But after about half an hour of stumbling around in the mizzle, we arrived right on top of the letterbox. No mere bottle in a bank, over the years the letterbox has been upgraded several times and now boasts a solid concrete shell and a sturdy metal door. And once inside, we were in letterbox heaven. A proper logbook signed by hundreds of like-minded travellers and, of course, the all-precious stamp of the place that started it all. We signed the book, adding our name to the list of letterboxes that stretches back over 100 years, and made ourselves a tiny part of that history.
What was quite amazing was that this letterbox shrine basically was just in the middle of nowhere. So this first letterboxer that went out to find this place had some clear ideas about what he wanted to do, or maybe no ideas whatsoever, just venturing out with his bottle and just sticking it wherever he could find suitable, it seems.
After our slog into the pool, there was no question of returning the same way, and we started to follow what seemed to be a path back towards the north. But again, this path soon disappeared and left us stumbling around the deeply vegetated boggy ground. And I realised that I'd lost my map, which I had rakishly tucked into my belt. Despite a quick frantic search where we attempted to retrace our steps, it was gone, lost somewhere in the waving green sea of Molinia. No matter. With the help of Dave's GPS, we eventually bundled back onto the military roads at Ockerton Court, and I felt sure I knew my way around from there, so was confident to say goodbye to Dave and Tom while I went in search of a place to camp out. But, alone now, and climbing higher towards the peaks of Yestor and the High Willhays, the clouds came in with renewed force. My earlier confidence in where I was began to evaporate, and I really wished I had my map when I found a map. Not my map, but a different map, just lying on the ground, right in my path. I was grateful for exactly what I needed, but it was a coincidence that set my mind reeling. Anyway, finally to the exciting bit. You see, this whole adventure has led me to decide to set up a letterbox of my own. You should soon be able to find this by ordering the next Dartmoor letterbox catalogue, but in the meantime I'll give you a clue. Wanderer above a sea of fog searched for a rock that wouldn't log. Between a raven and a chest lies a pixie's writing desk. Once this location you have found, my letterbox is nigh around. And I shall be adding a Dartmoor podcast geocache in the vicinity too, if that's more of your thing. I should say that watching my first ever video, The Search for the Nutcracker, will help with the clues. I have a suspicion that this won't be the last time we discuss letterboxes on this channel, and I can only imagine what adventures this new angle on Dartmoor exploration might lead me to. Thanks very much for listening to another ramble. See you next time.